when you are in it, when you've lost your job, when you've decided you were going to take some time off to take care of your parents or take care of your children or whomever it is, you go back and there is this break and you're not the same person that you were when you were, the person that you were 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And so your values are going to change to some extent, but your ambitions are going to change. And so just really understanding in that moment where they are and where they want to be.
Hello, and welcome back to the Career Flipper podcast. Your permission slip to flip your career, rethink work, life, and, well, all the messy stuff in between. I'm your host, Jenny Dempsey, furniture flipper, career change coach, juggling a customer experience day job, and your slightly unhinged cheerleader for figuring this whole thing out right alongside you. So, what happens when you step out of the workforce for 11 years to raise your kids and then try to step back in? This is something I personally know nothing about, but I do have friends that are starting to experience this now. And for my guest today, Raina Gandhi of Baltimore, Maryland, it meant diving into high-pressure roles, navigating workforce politics, and yes, even bullying, and ultimately realizing she wanted something more aligned with her values. Raina's career flip is anything but linear. She's gone from investment banking to higher education leadership to honestly getting laid off, and now she's a founder of Rising Tide Consulting, where she helps women leaders and entrepreneurs break through what she calls the inner glass ceiling. That's the sneaky self-doubt, perfectionism, and I'm not enough voice that so many of us wrestle with. I'm raising my hand here because yes, I'm in that boat. And she's doing all this while a mom of 2 girls. And in her conversation, she opens up about what it's like to re-enter the workforce after years away raising her kids, and how workplace bullying and politics really tested and shaped her career path, and why women often negotiate better for others than for themselves. And honestly, she admits this for herself too, and how we can really flip that pattern. We also talk about the surprising way that your strengths and values can serve as an anchor in career change when you're just not sure which direction to go. And she also gives practical grounded steps for you sitting at your desk right now, dreading another day in a job that just doesn't fit anymore. This episode is raw, relatable, and filled with a lot of insights for anyone who's ever second-guessed themselves at work or wondered if it's too late to start over when you're coming back into something you haven't been for quite a while. She really reminds us that none of our struggles are wasted. That hard stuff, that can really become your greatest source of power and the very fuel for whatever comes next. So get ready for the episode. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow the podcast, and let's get into our chat with Raina now. You know, Raina, we connected through an amazing human who was also on the Career Flipper. Shout out to Annie Cole. Thank you, Annie, for bringing me Raina. Raina, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. How are you?
So good, and so happy to have you here. This is such a gift. I'm really excited to dive into your career flip story and all the goods. So tell everybody a little bit about you, where you are, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, first of all, for having me, Jenny. And Annie, shout out. Thank you so much for introducing us. This has already been so much fun. Jenny and I just had a great conversation before we got on this. So
yes.
Thank you. I have a consulting and coaching company. It's called Rising Tide Consulting. And what we do is we specialize in empowering women to break through their inner glass ceilings and overcome different kinds of limiting beliefs that they deal with while they're in the workforce, right? A lot of professional women, they get stuck for many reasons. Sometimes they struggle with negotiating their worth, or sometimes they struggle with their inner critic. It just becomes very loud. And so what I mean by this inner glass ceiling is this psychological and emotional barrier that women, and honestly, other marginalized groups also impose on themselves. And so there's this fear of rejection. There's perfectionism. And a lot of it, if not all of it, is due to societal conditioning and internalized beliefs and self-doubt. So what ends up happening is these internal barriers, ultimately, they prevent us from reaching our full potential. And pursuing opportunities for advancement. And so what I do is I work specifically with women leaders and entrepreneurs who want to step into their full potential, but are struggling to do so. They know it's there. They just need help getting there. And so I just love to partner with them and help them with that so that they can get to the C-suite if that's what they choose. And they can be in rooms where, I like to say, where decisions are being made, and they can bring other women, because a rising tide lifts all boats.
I love that. I love that. And that is definitely speaking to my own little challenges, which sometimes I think it's imposter syndrome. But I think when you called it the inner glass ceiling, like that like really makes sense, because the expectations and the boundaries that we put on ourselves, like, I mean, that's important. And I'm excited to dive into that. I probably have like 10,000 questions for you on that. In the meantime, how did you get to this point where you're helping women do these amazing things?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it comes from my own story. I started in investment banking and did that for a couple of years, did microfinance in India for a year, came back, did banking, went for my MBA, went back to banking. So there's definitely, a pattern here. And then I took 11 years off to raise my daughters. And so when my older one was 11 and my younger one was 8, I decided that it was definitely time. And at the time, we lived in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and Wake Forest was there, and I had a business school background. So it was just the perfect fit for me to go back to work full time. And I went back as a career coach. Did that for a couple of years and realized I wanted to do more managerial work. So I took a role in DC at American University at their business school as the assistant dean for career services. And I did that for about 4 years, and bumped up against some bullying, bumped up against some just frustration around a lot of different things, not being able to, when you're leading a team and you feel stuck because you can't move them forward because you don't have the resources, and that the resources can exist, but they're not being provided to you. And so sometimes you just feel like I don't know if this is going to be the right fit anymore, right? So I decided I was going to try something different. And I worked at Johns Hopkins for a couple of years in their School of Education as the assistant dean for strategic initiatives, which was so different because I was no longer managing a team. I was an individual contributor. And I was very excited to be, because I wanted to try something different. Turns out when I was in that role, I bumped up against again, bullying, and realized that as I was making certain mistakes, that I was making them and realizing it at the same time. So, for example, the job that they hired me for, the job description and what they told me the job was, and then when I showed up, it wasn't quite the same. And I should have advocated for myself, and I wish I had. And there are ways that I could have done that would have made me successful, but I didn't do it because I was too caught up at that time in a lot of the emotions of this. And then I struggled to, just in general, I've struggled to network because I'm an introvert. And so as I've gone through my career, I've just in this role I feel like I should have advocated for a higher salary and a higher title. I knew my worth, and I think it's really important to believe in yourself and ask the right questions and get the correct, adequate compensation, right? And I don't know that I did as good of a job doing that, even though I used to teach negotiation. So there's this whole idea of women negotiate better for others than they do for themselves. And so I think that I fell into that trap as well. So over the years, I've noticed some of these patterns. When I got bullied and I stood up for myself in this last role, I got riffed. I was the only senior leader on the team who got riffed. I basically stood up for myself, and the person who was riffing me was also the same person who was bullying me. And so I didn't really stand a chance. So, okay, so, that brings up a whole bunch of emotions that you feel when you lose your job. And so I started to really think about the patterns in my life and why they are the way they are. So I dug a little bit deeper. I've done coaching. I've done career coaching. I've certified in change management. I'm certified as a executive coach, leadership coach, organizational development coach. So I've done all of that. So I knew that there was something deeper that I needed to dig for. And I stumbled across this concept of women-centered coaching. And so I took that course. I'm a lifelong learner, as you can tell. I can't stop. But I took that course and I really started to unpack what a lot of that narrative was that I was telling myself and that I was being told from an early age, and how that did not align with American investment banking, higher education, consulting, and all of the things. And as I talked to more and more women, I realized that they were not a first generation American, but they were experiencing a lot of the same things that I was experiencing. And I just realized that I wish that I'd had somebody who would help me through some of that. And I would have come out, I think, a little bit different, but I didn't. And now I'm really passionate about helping women who are dealing with some of these structural barriers and need support.
Yeah. So you took from all of your experiences of what you, when you look back, you wish you did differently. And it sounds like kind of bundled all of that up. And now you're helping others to do better based off of what you learned. And it's almost like you hear these things, you have to go through the rough times in order to, be able to teach and guide others with it. And the hard stuff can sometimes be the biggest part of your story. And so, Raina, okay, so you were in banking. I mean, numbers and suits. And I'm just picturing just this very, very, starchy corporate environment. So you're here and you're doing this and you're like, yeah, this isn't like the best fit for me. And then when you were in that time period, you're working on the day-to-day, a Monday through Friday, a very 9 to 5, and you're doing that. I'm curious, like going back to this internal glass ceiling that you mentioned, based off of what you knew or what you remember you knew at that point, did you have that in your work ethic? Like, were there like limitations you were putting on yourself at that time in the start? If so, I'm curious, what were they, like, based on what you knew then?
You make a really good point, because I haven't thought about this. And no, I was 22 years old and I wanted to do this specific thing, and I went for it, and we worked 70, 80 hours a week, oftentimes on the weekends, excuse me. And I was there to learn and be exposed to senior leadership within the bank and then also with our clients. And I loved it. I burned out after a couple of years and knew I wanted to go back to business school. So decided to take a break and do some development economics work in India. So at that time, I was not at all fazed by the fact that women were in the minority in the investment banking field, certainly women of color. It's there, but it's not in your face, and you're treated like all the other analysts are. You're not parsed out in any way, So for me, I didn't have any of those feelings. It's interesting that you asked that, because what that tells me is that came later in life. It's almost like I started with a blank slate, but then experiences taught me differently.
Which is so interesting that, yeah, you were just like, all right, I'm in it. I'm doing this. There was no fear, nothing holding you back. And you learned the, fears and anxieties and these limitations over time. When do you think that started for you?
When I took 11 years off to raise my girls, I didn't blink. I was very confident in my decision making. I was very confident in knowing that I would be able to, I may have to take a couple of steps back, and that's okay, because you make decisions based on the information that you have at the time. And I was still very, very confident. One thing that I did not think about that I realize now is when you're not earning money, you are not building retirement. So there are definitely things that I didn't think about that I probably should have paid more attention to. However, it didn't impact my confidence at the time. And then I went back to work at Wake Forest, and I worked with an amazing team, women who were lifting each other up, and it was a lot of fun. I just wanted something a little bit more senior. And I think it was after moving to the Baltimore, DC area and having the work experiences then that I realized that, wow, the more senior you get, the lonelier it gets. And that's when a lot of these questions started popping in my head. I would specifically get bullied by other women, and they would be pulling the strings of the deans or whatever it is, right? And so I just, I don't know. I guess that's when it started.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good call out to kind of acknowledge when that began. And the reason is just because when we're changing careers, like what I'm learning is you kind of become this new version of yourself. You have so many skills that you bring with you. I picture like, you got the suitcases, you have all these great skills, and you're now applying them in whatever new role or business or whatever it is that you're starting. But you learn new things along the way about your own, maybe resilience, your own, the limitations that you set on yourself. There's other things that come into play around like, what does it mean to be successful in this new realm? And then sometimes if others around you, there's bullying or if there's other things like that can influence so much about what you do moving forward. I remember when I started to turn furniture flipping into a business, and I was chatting with some colleagues from my past industry, and I would get comments like, "Oh, well, that's a fun hobby." And I'm like, "Oh, no, it's not a hobby. Like, this is a business." And they're like, "You're digging in the trash, like, and you're fixing something up." And I was like, "Well, I'm not like in the trash, but like I had to like continue to like prove and work extra hard. And I'm like, I'm not here to change someone's mind." But then it started to like, I started to then question myself, but why? And so like, I think that that's so fascinating that you bring that up. And Raina, I think also like for the women that you work with, do you find that to be kind of a consistent pattern where, we kind of we're fresh-eyed and bushy-tailed as we're younger, and we just dive in, and then we learn along the way, and that develops the anxieties and frustrations and limitations. Do you find that to be a consistent pattern?
Well, what's interesting is I don't actually. So I feel like I might actually be the exception and not the rule. Almost always, and I think this comes from this applies to me as well. We carry a lot of the narratives that were taught from when we were very, very young. And so, you may not have a lot of memories of your childhood, but if somebody was really mean to you, you probably remember to this day who it was, where it happened, all of those things, because those memories stick and we do carry them with us. And so what happens is as we get older and we have all of these other experiences, we almost revert back to what that felt like because the same emotions are brought up again, the same feelings. And so a lot of the work I do is visiting that narrative that we were taught when we were younger and helping my clients realize that that narrative doesn't even hold true. It probably didn't hold true then. It definitely doesn't hold true now, right? People could just be mean. There could be so many reasons, or parents have their own generational trauma. So there's so many reasons that we are each of us struggle in our own ways, right? There's also societal pressures and barriers, and so many women struggle with the same kinds of pressures there too. So what I end up doing is I really help them understand where that narrative is coming from, and we do a lot of deep work to figure out how we can change that narrative. We work together to change that narrative, and it's it's like becoming a new self-concept, and your own self-concept is just different from the person that you were 6 weeks before, or 3 months before, or however long. So I think that that's been really helpful. And I also, one of the things that I wish that I had was, I wish that I had known my strengths. I wish I had codified that a little bit better and known my strengths and my values early on. So I think we all think we do, but most of us don't do the exercises. Mm-hmm. And so I'm certified in Clifton Strengths, and so I do that exercise with my clients, and we do a very, very extensive values exercise as well. Because when you are in it, when you've lost your job, when you've decided you were going to take some time off to take care of your parents or take care of your children or whomever it is, you go back and there is this break, and you're not the same person that you were when you were, the person that you were 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And so your values are going to change to some extent, but your ambitions are going to change. And so just really understanding in that moment where they are and where they want to be.
Quick ad break. You know how Raina talks about going back into the workforce as a new version of herself? Well, furniture can do that too. With Arlington Woodworks Furniture Balm, you just rub it on your dressers, bookshelves, or coffee tables, and suddenly they have got new life for their next chapter, and they look so much better. It's made with only 3 simple ingredients: organic flaxseed oil, beeswax, and citrus, so it's safe for kids, pets, and even your cutting boards, honestly. It smells so good. It's made in small batches by a Navy veteran husband and wife team, and it's literally the easiest way to revive your furniture. 1 jar is about a little over $30, and it will last you for a really long time. If you want to try it out, head over to arlington-woodworks.com and use code FLIPPER for 10% off at checkout, and give your furniture the second chance it deserves. Again, that's arlington-woodworks.com. Use code FLIPPER at checkout for 10% off. It's so true. And they evolve. They evolve over time based off of those experiences. And StrengthsFinder, that's awesome. I worked for a company years ago. We did StrengthsFinder in the office. And that was probably one of the most rewarding, team building things that I did, because I've used it so much more outside of work. And the other thing about StrengthsFinder that I find so weird, and maybe you can speak to this a bit, but with StrengthsFinder, even though you are experiencing new things and you're changing and evolving as just a human, the strengths seem to stay relatively the same. Like, I retook the test 10 years later, thinking, I'm a lot wiser. I'm a lot different than I was a decade ago. But the core strengths were all the same except for 1. And so I was like, that's so wild to me. But I think it kind of goes in line with what you're saying, is that, our core values are core to who we are, and they do shift and evolve and kind of blow in the wind, even though experiences change us. But these things that are core to us can kind of also become new things, like how we connection or positivity or empathy. Those are my top 2, for StrengthsFinder. So how do those look with who I am now? It may look a little bit different than how it looked with me 10 years ago. And so hearing you say that and just kind of doing the work to really fine tune what those are. I have my core values and my strengths on Post-it notes on my computer monitor. So I see them all the time because I've done kind of a little bit of that, those exercises with career coaches back in the day. But I think, it's important to acknowledge what those are and know that it's okay if they change, but it's also okay if they stay the same and just show up differently for us in the future.
Absolutely. And it's a great place to start when you're really doing a lot of that self-reflection and that work, because it helps you build your confidence, also knowing, wow, these are some pretty amazing things. And here's what I've done in my personal and professional life that demonstrate these strengths.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, Raina, as you are you're continuing on your own career path and you are building your business to help other women, and you're constantly changing, evolving, and learning every day too. But I'm really curious, where do you see your career path going next?
Yeah. So I've been doing this for a few years and I am incredibly fulfilled. And my goal is to help other women be fulfilled in their careers. We make a lot of choices. Some of us make choices. Some of us are, we have to work even if we may want to stay at home to take care of our parents or our children or whomever it is. So there are, of course, different circumstances. But the goal here is that if we can get to the C-suite, or if we can get to these managerial positions and we can bring others along with us, then we can make those structural changes, because now women will be at the helm, and they'll be able to help with breaking down a lot of those barriers and those obstacles. Right now in this country, we have trouble with childcare, we have wage gap, we have power penalty, we have, I mean, the list just goes on and on. And we need to tackle some of those. But in order to do that, women need to have the confidence to do it. And they're so capable. I mean, I work with really smart, successful women. We all have our inner critic. We all have a little bit of imposter syndrome. We all have those feelings of getting hurt when you're missing out. It's funny. I have two daughters. When they were younger, and they would feel badly because they would see something on social media and they would be like, oh, I wasn't invited to that party. And I said, you know what? You can be in your 40s and you're still going to feel a little bit of that you weren't invited to that party. And it happens, right? So a lot of these things are life lessons. And so my goal, really, my hope is that the earlier seasoned women that I get to work with, the more impact I can make.
And it sounds like you're doing just that. And now I'm really curious if you'll kind of share some of the things, like some of these secrets here. Career flippers listening in, a lot, like women and men, from all different backgrounds, all around the world. And so I'm curious, like, what are the things that you see? Like, if you had to pick, like, I don't know, the top 3 things that really get in the way of, women or people in general making a career change when they feel where they currently are isn't where they want to be. Like, if they have something else that they're striving to do, whether it is getting that C-suite role or it's starting their own business, but they haven't even, made a change yet, but they're feeling scared to make the change. They're feeling maybe they can't do it, or, all of those kind of limiting beliefs. Like, what are some of the things that you have found and that you have helped women with get through so they do move forward? How do you help them get unstuck?
So I think a lot of that goes back to what we were saying earlier with strengths and values, really understanding what your strengths and values are, and then aligning those with whatever career opportunities you might be considering. A lot of times our confidence stops us from doing things that we are very capable of doing. And so the goal is to help build that confidence so you can go for those opportunities and get those opportunities because you're very capable of doing that. So I think for those who want to make a career switch, first, if you've been in the same position for a long time and you don't have your resume up to date, update your resume, work with a career coach specifically, because they're ATS friendly resumes, and you have to be very mindful about what keywords you're using and all the things and format, and the list goes on. So you want to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success there, but you also want to do a lot of that inner work to really understand, because there are stepping stones, and you may know what you want to do be 10 years from now or 15 years from now or 20 years from now. But if you're thinking about 20 years from now, even 5 years from now, that might not be your goal anymore, right? So just really understanding, getting to the crux of what your values and your strengths are will really help guide you a lot.
Yeah. And I think that, that's an important call out, because if we don't have that anchor, or that foundation to launch from, it can be challenging to just jump out into the deep end and you're like, well, where am I now? Like, so I think that's an important call out. And, for anyone else, like any other pieces of advice that you have that could help someone who might be, maybe it's a woman sitting at her desk right now and she is stressed out and doesn't want to be in this current career role, wants to do something else. What advice would you have for her?
So once you have a general sense of which direction you want to go in, figure out what you need to be successful in that new role. You want to make sure that you're going to bridge any gaps that you may have in skills or in industry or in the network. So take courses, definitely network, do informational interviews. People love to talk about themselves. So use your LinkedIn and your personal network to make sure that you're talking to people at specific companies that you may want to work at or in specific industries as well. Maybe do a SWOT analysis on yourself. This will give you a little bit of clarity as well in terms of where your strengths and weaknesses are and what kind of opportunities you'd like to pursue.
Mm-hmm. That's a great tip. And I think sometimes it's with all of the things on LinkedIn. I mean, you get sales after sales DM. Like, it's like, it can feel really sketch to just like message someone and be like, hi, I'm so-and-so. Like, I'd love to learn about your job without sounding like some robot. And LinkedIn is such a great tool for networking, but yeah, it can feel like, oh, I don't want to sound like this type of person. Do you have any tips? Like, what could someone literally send in a direct message to someone who works at a company where they would love to work? Like, what is something you could say without sounding like, I don't know, a sketch salesy, I don't know, robot?
And you're right, because I get pitch slapped all the time. So yeah,
I love
I get it.
yeah.
I totally get it.
That's great.
I think there are a couple of things you can do. One is if you're interested in a specific company or a specific role and you know somebody else who works at that place, ask them to do an interview, right? But let's say you know somebody who works at that place. Ask your friend that you are connected to do a warm introduction or a soft introduction. That's one way to do it, because then you're not going in completely cold and they'll be more willing to talk to you. Another thing to do is if you've gone to college, you've gotten a master's degree, you use your peer network in terms of your student network, your
mm-hmm.
alumni from your college or your high school or wherever you studied. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good idea too, because I know if someone called me tomorrow and said, hey, I went to Wharton and I'm really interested in X and I was wondering if you could spare a couple minutes to talk to me about your role at such and such company, and I would do it in a heartbeat, right? Because that there's this connection that we have. Mm-hmm. So similarly, you can use that network too.
That's a good step. Yeah.
And honestly, it's really hard, I know, because as an introvert, it's hard for me too, but networking is the key. And learning to do it well. It's not just networking, right? Yeah. So there are, I have found myself having to tell clients sometimes that when you go to these networking events, either go early and eat or don't eat or just eat a little bit or something, because then they'll talk with their mouth full or and they don't mean to do it. Or they're not seeing other people's body language, that they're having a closed off conversation. So paying attention to other people's body language when you're at a networking event is really important. So things like that, right? Mm-hmm. Just using some guidance, I think, is helpful too.
That's so funny. And honestly, like, I am someone, when I eat, I end up wearing half of it. So I think, like, whether or not I'm eating before or after, there's going to be like crumbs in my hair or something, I'm still going to just be like, hi, I'm Jenny. But I think that is it's just like those actual real things. I'm like, are you chatting with a bunch of people and you got kale in your teeth? Like, I mean, let's get real. Like, these are things that I've had happen to me before, so maybe that's just funny. But I think that when you get down to the nitty gritty of looking at how are we connecting with people, because at the end of the day, it is all just people helping people, and showing up as your true authentic self is how you'll build that connection, whether it's, connecting from a place that you went to school or worked in the past, or who knows what it is. Just showing up as your true self and putting yourself out there sounds like really the key. And having a guide like you to help foster that for someone, I could see that being incredibly valuable. And Raina, I would love to have people like talking about networking. How can they connect with you? Where can they find you? How can they work with you?
Yeah, so definitely they can find me on LinkedIn. It's Raina B. Gandhi, and my company is called Rising Tide Consulting. So you can look me up on my website as well. It's risingtideconsultingllc.com. And of course, you can send me an email as well, which is Raina at risingtideconsultingllc.com. And I'm on Instagram as well, which is rising.tide.consulting.
Amazing. You're everywhere. Thank
I'm
you so
everywhere.
much, Raina. It was great to talk with you today. I appreciate you being here.
So I appreciate you for having me. Thank you so much, Jenny.
Thanks for hanging out with me and Raina on this episode of the Career Flipper podcast. Seriously, it means the world that you're here. All the ways to connect with Raina are in the show notes, but if this conversation gave you even a tiny spark of hope or made you feel a little less alone, the best way to keep this going is to hit follow, leave a review, or share it with a friend who's also trying to figure out their next chapter. That's how we keep building this little corner of our career flipping community together. And hey, if you have a career flip story of your own, or maybe you're in the messy middle of one, I'd love to hear it. Head over to thecareerflipper.com and share it with me. Who knows, maybe you'll be sitting here with me on a future episode. At the end of the day, my biggest hope is that these stories remind you, you're not behind, you're not broken, and it's never too late to start again. This step might feel terrifying, but it could also be exactly the change that you need. So take it, even if it's messy, even if your voice shakes, because honestly, what's the best that could happen?